This is IsAware, powered by Intersoft Associates. IsAware is your connection to exploring the systems and software that power businesses like yours with expert insight, experience, and advice.
Welcome back to IsAware. I'm Chris Bintliff, and I'm joined by Hy Goldstoff and Abe Unger. And guys, I want to talk today about Microsoft Access. One of the reasons why I think Microsoft Access is a really interesting topic is it's how a lot of people, I think, get introduced to databases. It's already sort of software that's installed, or it's not a terrible leap for me to sort of, maybe I've got some basic sort of database stuff. Maybe it's my introduction to database. And then as the business grows, it becomes like the platform. And I want to talk about that. Abe, is there a problem with growing with Microsoft Access? Is there a growth issue? Is it just fine? Should I just be finding ways where it can continue to serve my company in big, strong, great ways? Or what are the risks of kind of entrenching into a platform like Access?
So in Access itself, there are a number of issues, especially as you grow. It's one thing if you're a lone person using this system and you're putting in some data and just for yourself, that's one issue. But once you start dealing with multi-user capability in Access is not something that does not really work well. Years ago, it was considered supported, then it was not considered supported, but multiple users using the same Access database causes all kinds of problems. One of the biggest we've seen is corruption, which happens fairly often in an Access database. So if you have multiple users using an Access database, you better make sure that your backups are up to date, because that corruption can be a problem, and many times that's not something that you can recover from, and you got to go back to a prior version. There's issues with performance. As the more users are using it, the slower it's going to be. It's not designed for the use. So if you're looking for some kind of a product that's going to work well in terms of scaling, Access is not it. You do want to move away from Access. It has some nice things in it, some little reports that you can do and a couple of wizards that you can build, that kind of stuff. But again, all of that is doable in the real world in other applications, or what we would call enterprise applications. Access doesn't fall into that category. So as soon as you start using it for your enterprise, and your enterprise does not mean hundreds of people, it could mean 2 people. Access is not really the way to go anymore.
We've also found that in order for it to be as responsive as it can be, that there are 2 parts to Access. Even if it's done correctly, there's an Access database which has all the software, and then the data is in a separate file. Most people don't do it that way. Many people don't do it that way. But even if you do, accessing it, from a shared drive is slow as hell. So people have to copy the program, and we've had situations like that where we took the data portion within Access, moved it to a back-end database. In most cases, Microsoft SQL Server, so it performs better. But you still have to move that program file onto your own computer. So as changes are being made, you've got to create a whole infrastructure just to make sure you're using the latest version. And we have a client now that we just engaged, who they don't have servers. Everything they do is in the cloud, and it's sitting on a Dropbox, and you can't have more than one person use it at the same time. So it's great for a small. Once you're starting. There are many reasons to do it, because you can easily add fields, change screen design as you're learning. And it's more for the people that are not necessarily professional, but do it as an avocation. But ultimately that winds up becoming a problem as different people start touching it. And you get, again, we've had a number of people come to us who have Access, doing stuff within the Access environment, where people have added fields, modified screens, and you have data anarchy. You have the same field supposedly sitting on multiple screens, yet they each point to a different spot in the database. So you can have, this is not the case with this one, Because you can have, main phone number sitting in 5 different places or a number of different places, because, nobody thought about the overall. It's in some cases it's too easy, and when you know what's going on, that's fine. But as the person supporting it, again, you doing it is not a computer professional, more as an avocation or someone who has an MIS degree, which is management, but not computer science. There can be problems. And one of the tasks we're going to have is, going out and cleansing the data to making sure all the various fields that should be the same are together and deal with multiple versions of the truth and everything. So there's a whole exercise before we get deeply into improving what they have.
Do you find that there's a typical scenario where the access user was kind of a DIYer, and it's a natural step for them to move up into Power Apps and more of that DIY kind of thing? And we've talked before about the issues the Power Apps can present. And so it becomes an issue where the expert is not behind the wheel and problems can just sort of accumulate. Or do you find that people don't know that they have problems with access? They just don't know that they've outgrown it. What's a more common sort of issue high, or is there a third or fourth issue that's really shows up?
Again, in some of the things we've seen recently, the software was written years and years and years ago. The procedures that are used are not really, and I'm talking about, how the software is used. Because it's not really written by a software professional, the person who's using the software, in this case, it's installed correctly, and you can have multiple people using it, not a lot, but a few people. But you're accessing the software as though you're a computer administrator.
Yeah.
If the data field has changed, you've got to inactivate it and create a new one. All sorts of those things that are, what the technology was like, the state of the art in terms of software development, more than 20 years ago. Because, again, the person was not, computer professional, and didn't know a better way to do it, and so it's cumbersome that people are acting as computer operators, and they're not really using it to help them do their job better. They're kind of entering data at the altar of the database administrator. And in all 3 cases, what we've shown them and what we can do is life changing. In their world, in the land of the blind, the sighted person is king.
Right.
In this case, we're kind of showing them what can be done, and for not that much money.
Abe, is Microsoft Access like a trigger phrase? So when you see that come across, you're like, we're probably going to need to give this some attention. Like, it's just one of those things where you kind of think to yourself, that's a red flag. And what is my upgrade or my migration sort of option? Is it, as High points out, for not much? Is it a custom solution? Is it, give me some practical guidance on, if I'm using Access, here's the next best step.
Sure. So yes, it is a trigger for me. It's one of those things where, again, having dealt with Access over the years, I use it myself for things. It's okay for some small things to manage. It's not a bad product, don't get me wrong. But once you're dealing with multi-users, it doesn't work. So your upgrade path is, you definitely want to get out of that. You definitely want to talk to us about what your options are, whether that is a Power Apps application, or whether that is move it into a SQL Server database or some kind of an enterprise database product, building some kind of a front end around that, or even using Access as a front end to connect to that, which again is not what I recommend, but it is a path. It gets you on the road to moving out of Access. So move your database out so that at least your corruption problem goes away. Then you can move your front end out. So you can do it in stages. It's not all or one or all at once. Usually in Access, database structure is not necessarily done properly. As we've talked about in other clients, it's the kind of thing where as you're doing that migration, you probably want to look at those structures and figure out what should be done as opposed to what was done. Take that opportunity. But yes, you sort of want to talk to us about getting out of Access. So web front ends, I mean, today's day and age, it's easy. Set up a site out there, put your database in the cloud. You give you some kind of a front end access, security, all of that is taken into account. And you'll have access to your program. Look, we have a client who's still using an ancient laptop that they're lugging around. It's got Access version 2, by the way. And it's still being used.
Good for them.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where she's gotten to the point where now this is not going to work anymore. We really got to get out of there, and we're discussing now the opportunity. What can we do rather than just port it, which we can do once we're opening the box? What else can we do? What else can we make her life easier? Things have changed over the years, especially since Access 2. So what can we do better in today's day and age that'll give her what she needs? And as you said, scalable. So as I mentioned at the beginning, yes, it's a trigger word.
Hi, Abe makes an interesting point about what else we could do when we get in there. What is I don't know if I'm thinking about sort of the future proofing my situation. What are some things I'm missing out on? So I might be thinking, well, there's something broken, or I know that multi-use or something. I might be thinking in a reaction or responsive mode when I think I need to do something different with Access. But what am I missing out on that I don't even realize that 2 years from now, 5 years from now, I'll be better positioned for once I leave Access?
Well, if you're in a pure Access environment, talking to other systems via API is problematic.
Yeah.
Again, one of the people that we're doing some work for today have a whole bunch of systems. If you were to look at their data flow, where the similar information is entered, and ultimately it goes into their enterprise system. Today's Access based, and we're in the middle of re-engineering that. But what we can do is we can, and they're entering that same information in a CRM, an estimating system, and a job costing system. And they're entering all that same data. Well, we can pick one that's the owner of the data, and we can then take it out of that system, let's say their CRM, put it into their estimating system. And again, ideally, that estimating system should be retired, but we're not at the point to make a real business case for that.
Sure.
Put it into the estimating system, put it into the job costing system. So it's all one version of the truth. If you take my name, which is it's misspelled at least 2 different ways, and it becomes hard to correlate them. So we can then correlate that data. We can write to other databases that if you're in a pure Access environment, you can't do that, and ultimately interface with their payroll system. All that stuff just becomes hard to do. Yes, you can do it with CSVs. You can do it without outputting files, but you can't. But that requires human intervention. You can't do it automatically. Just let it go behind the scenes. So
that's a great point about how, yes, you can homebrew some sort of ugly solution that just creates more work for yourself. And sometimes
Right.
we get into that mindset. It's almost in my mind like a piece of furniture that you get so used to walking around that you don't realize you should just move the furniture. It can become one of those scenarios.
Even over here, the data is, the data is recorded on the time, recorded on pieces of paper, and somebody back at the ranch inputs it. And we proposed, if they're entering the data anyway, let them enter it into a system. It would ultimately be available, distributed, in a distributed fashion to people out in the field. Let that person who is entering the data review the data just to make sure it's accurate. Whatever problems might be. We can do a lot more in terms of making sure that nobody works, 25 hours a day. So we can do all that, back at the source and make everybody's job easier. They're entering data. There's no transcription error. They're paid correctly. The job is billed correctly. So, it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah. High gold stuff and Abe Unger with some great practical, tactical advice on the advantages of moving away from Microsoft Access as you're getting more into that enterprise space. Thanks, guys, for all of these insights. Really valuable. And I think a lot of companies are probably dealing with it in some way or another as they're growing out of Access. And this is really good stuff. And a good reminder, as Abe said earlier, just call us and we'll talk through it a little bit. There's nothing to it for us to start to explore a little bit with you what's going on and how we can help. Guys, I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for IsAware, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. IsAware is powered by Intersoft Associates, who believes the more you know about your IT, the better. Visit us at intersoftassociates.com and schedule your free consultation to talk about how custom software can help your business.